want to go ahead and thank everyone for joining us and say good afternoon to both the panelists and the people attending the webinar. Thanks for being here and joining us today. We're pretty excited to share the Arizona State Land Department's transformation story, tasked with, for the last 110 years, with managing a complex 9.2 million acres large checkerboard of state trust lands for its beneficiaries. ASLD determined to employ a cloud-first strategy to improve front-end operations and eliminate its largely manual processes. Several years into this very, very successful project, they're sharing how they did it. So we have this great panel of speakers today to share their multi-year journey with us. I'm going to quickly introduce them, and then we'll dive right in. Quick note, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section below, and we'll try to answer them at the end or with the typed response during. So now for our panelists, from the AZ Land side, we have joining us Ryan Johnson. Ryan is CIO. And was the IT sponsor for the project and really has been an instrumental champion of change in how the agency modernized and how they could modernize. Thank you for being here, Ryan. Next, we've got Jennifer Spratling, project manager. Jennifer worked on the business side and held the role of subject matter expert. She was the SME for the project. Jen was instrumental in defining requirements cross-functionally throughout each phase of the project. Welcome, Jen.
Hello.
Next, from the MST Solutions side, we have joining us Ryan Smith, VP of Customer Success. Ryan was engagement manager and lead from the MST side and was charged with ensuring a successful project and high adoption from stakeholders. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for being here. And also from the MST side, we've got Rahul Rathore, who's VP of Public Sector. He's joining us. Rahul helped champion incremental change through a very, very thoughtful and collaborative approach to working with the agency to ensure maximum value and adoption. Thank you for joining us, Rahul.
Thank you for having us, JC.
So now I'm just going to get us to jump right in and start by handing the relay to Ryan Johnson to just give us an idea of what ASLD does and what the scope of their work is.
Sure. Thanks, JC. Well, you mentioned some of it. So the Arizona State Land Department was established in 1915, but it actually started before that. So in 1912, one of the first things that happened is that they established this 3-person state land commission. And they determined at that time that the best thing to do was to establish a department to manage the then 10.9 million acres or so of state trust land that was spread across the state for future generations of people in Arizona to supply revenue for them. So fast forward to today, like you said, we have about 9.2 million acres of state trust land. It's all the blue land that's on the map there. It's scattered mostly across the entire state. It's held in trust for 13 different beneficiaries. So the revenue off that land goes to the beneficiaries of the land. The largest of which of those is K-12, so common schools. There's a wide variety of activities that take place on that land. So we sell land for those beneficiaries. We lease land for a variety of activities, including like mineral leases, grazing, agriculture, commercial, oil and gas. So a whole lot of different business processes that are going on. Lots of different activity across the whole portfolio of those 9.2 million acres.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And so now with that absolutely huge responsibility, maybe we can move into the different problems and challenges that actually drove the decision to go ahead and go on this journey to radically transform operations. If I can hand a relay actually back to you, Ryan, to get us started on that and those critical business needs, that'd be great.
So you can imagine an agency that's been around for this long, taking care of these 9.2 million acres at this time. There was a lot of paper processes put in place. Paper processes have been around for a long time. So that's how our business operated up until, even just 6, 7 years ago. I mean, it was all paper-based. Customers couldn't conduct any business online, so that was a big issue, especially since the Arizona governor, one of his chief things that he wanted to promote in the state was online business processes, so that the customers and the citizens of Arizona could conduct that business online. So we wanted to achieve that. But perhaps the most the most poignant thing that stood out in my mind for this was I remember that the state land commissioner, one thing she asked of the entire department when she first started was, so if I want to know the status of an application that a customer has submitted for a piece of state trust land, now mind you, this could be anything, but we could even be talking about multi-million-dollar sales, right? What do I do? And the answer was, well, you got to come down to the department, you got to find the person that's working on the application, and you can ask them, if we can actually locate who's working on the application. So there's a bit of a problem there, obviously. Customer had a difficult time finding out what was going on with their application. Leadership had trouble, understanding what was going on with it as well. We actually took the land sale process itself and mapped it out throughout the building. So you can imagine this application would come in through the door as paper. It would get like a check sheet attached to it, and then it would literally just travel around our building. Now we have a small building in downtown Phoenix, about 4 floors. And we followed that file in that building 1.2 miles, I think it was, throughout the building. It made like 90 some stops. So you can imagine this is a very intensive process going on. It's all single threaded. So every stop it made, they made a check on the checklist. This process is done, then it'll move on to the next one. So a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what I'm wondering is how much of what AZ Land was going through with respect to these critical businesses, these challenges, and a lot of manual processes is representative of the public sector at large. Ryan Smith, can you answer a little bit about that and how much AZ Land is really kind of a microcosm for public sector?
Yes, thanks, JC, and good morning, everyone. So, I'd say it's, the challenges are really around preparation, resourcing, and understanding their current state. Ryan had mentioned an old standing process, paper driven. And, when you have your folks in the building focused on fulfilling their mission on a paper process, there's a lot of time that they have to take to do that. So it was difficult to, find stakeholders time to devote to initiating the project. And the preparation really just poses a challenge in general, as it's often difficult to create the necessary space to thoughtfully plan and really prepare for the change. And I think we would all agree planning and preparation will pay dividends downstream in any project. So that's one of the things. Also with that, it's really the timing of the project. We understand in public sector, often based on cyclical things like budgets and other deadlines and timings that things need to be done. It's another constraint that they have to frequently deal with. And then which people resources are needed to commit to beginning the messaging. Ryan mentioned the land commissioner. She was really the starting point of initiating this project as the sponsor. So that is paramount in getting any sort of change done is strong executive sponsorship. But knowing that the rest of the team were really inundated with fulfilling the mission, figuring out where to start and how to plan was really a big challenge. We talked a little bit about the resourcing. And again, they're working on what matters most and getting those applications throughout the building and process. So that was a real challenge as far as figuring out how much time, could need or would be needed to, have these stakeholders a part of the project. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning in public sector is, the ability to recruit skills or the roles that are needed to enact change is often a challenge. Let's not forget that, trying to find somebody that knows an old system or somebody that has the skill based on, an old COBOL technology It's pretty hard to do these days. So, this also really means that it's difficult to understand the current state of your systems. Many agencies are moving off of aged mainframes, could be COBOL or other legacy technologies, really with a patchwork of newer technology that's incrementally been added, over the years. Rightly so, to help bridge process gaps and try to create efficiencies, but nonetheless, it's just added to the complexity of the technology stack. So you take this challenge, you also add data disparity that has become a byproduct of the antiquated systems and the patchwork approach. And so really, in other words, it's a lot of Band-Aids, everything from a simple spreadsheet to a SQL server or a database, and other workarounds really just became the norm. So you can probably assume that this does add a lot of complexity to any starting point for any digital transformation. And from there, it's been really tough to figure out where to start. So I think, again, the preparation is really one of the larger challenges. And so when you think about these traits as you compare and contrast to the private sector, private sector's been able to modernize, I'd say, frequently over time. There's less tension and less volatility on cyclical budgets. Often, there's more available skill or ample resources in their actual organization or their workforce. And this just doesn't happen so much in the public sector. So I'd say the bright side to these challenges is, public sector, as they move toward a more cloud-based strategy. As Ryan had mentioned, Governor Ducey here in the state of Arizona, his term was government at the speed of business. And he unleashed a strategy to think cloud first. And so anytime an agency thought about modernizing or making an investment in technology, understand what cloud technologies were available. And so by doing that, we're able to continually improve and stay with emerging technologies without, becoming antiquated in the process. So I think, we like to call this future proofing. And we're starting to see that happen pretty rapidly these days in government.
All right. Thank you.
Back to you, GC.
Thank you. And I'm thinking with all of those considerations in mind, how not only do we tend to have a lot of legacy technologies, but we also have a plethora of workarounds dealing with those legacy technologies and with limited personnel. If we can move into early planning, how did we assemble, determine governance, assemble task forces, get buy-in? Can we move into just talking a little bit about that? And I think it would be good to start with you, Ryan Johnson, on the AZ Land side.
Great. So one of the first things that we did was obviously assemble an internal team for this project. We were looking at, we have an ERP system in place, a business system in place that tracks some of our processes. And so there's a team doing that, and this system's been around since the 90s, like Ryan said. It wasn't COBOL, but it was a custom-built system internal. So all the fun that goes along with that. We also engaged all of the work units of the business processes to identify subject matter experts that we could use to help us moving forward. We actually took kind of a time commitment back to the directors of those units and said, okay, this is how many hours we're going to need for this project, because this is a huge undertaking for this. So we started that. We identified that the first thing that we were going to be doing essentially was these 15 or so customer-facing applications we were going to focus on. We determined that they were the most frequent applications that were coming in and the ones that were most important to the agency. So we identified that we were going to be doing that first, right? Then we needed to look at buy-in, essentially, from the agency itself. This was a commissioner, as I mentioned before, was a commissioner-driven project. So this is definitely something that she wanted to happen. So I remember we got all the executives together at that time, and we informed them that this is the main focus of the agency. This is going to be our huge transformation. We added it to our agency scorecard, which goes to the governor's office. We added it to our strategic plan, and it's actually been on our strategic plan ever since. So we were working on that. And then one of the most neat things I think that happened is when we got all those subject matter experts together to help us drive this project forward, we brought on Jennifer Spratling onto our team to assist with that. And she was very instrumental because we had quickly identified that she, was someone that understood all the business processes that were in place with the department and could really see the vision forward that we wanted to do by implementing Salesforce, if that makes sense.
How about the third-party partner? When we brought in MST, what were those major factors that you were looking for?
So that definitely, that was something that happened early on. I actually wasn't even CIO at that time. I was just the GIS manager at that moment in time. And so the previous CIO had purchased Salesforce as something, to implement the department, but it was really just an IT-driven project without buy-in from the rest of the agency. So what happened at that point is we worked with our partners at Arizona Department of Administration. They helped us bring in another consultant, which took a look at all of our business processes and then made some determinations. Basically what they did is they looked at our current business system, our ERP system, determined what was in there, what business processes were in there. They reached out to all the different work units that use that system, kind of surveyed them about their experience with the system, what they'd like to see, what was their actual work process. And then they also kind of surveyed the agency for our capacity to make any changes. Because something this big, I mean, you have to have the bandwidth to be able to do that and the will to want to do that. They also took a look at that time, as mentioned before, the direction the state was headed in this space. So everything was trying to be pushed online. That was definitely an initiative from the governor's office. Other agencies were looking at CRM platforms as well. So we wanted to try to stick to some kind of standard across the state. And so after we went through all that, we determined that Salesforce was indeed the best platform for the department at that point. MST was actually brought in after that. So the vendor that we had before did a survey of all the Salesforce implementation vendors in the state of Arizona and determined that MST was definitely the best choice for us.
That's awesome. Thank you. And now, once MST was brought in, Rahul, can you take us through what did early planning look like on MST side?
Sure, Jesse. Thank you. Yeah, so when MST was bought in, right, our goal whenever we onboard new customers is to become their long-term strategic partners. We keep that in mind when we align our team members to ensure we not only address current project needs, but we also look at their long-term success and beyond. We started aligning the team members with expertise in Service Cloud, Community Cloud, and other technologies like document management solutions. ASLD was already using a custom document management solution as part of their suite of products. We looked at ASLD integration that they were using and how would we integrate it in Salesforce. So we started aligning and assembling this team to understand the overall suite of applications that ASLD was using. For example, we talked about the document management. We also noted that it was a custom application. So we were able to find that experience among our team members where we had integrated a similar application for one of our another state agency here in Arizona. And I think Ryan Johnson talked about, as he was aligning the team members, MST team partnered with Ryan J. and Jennifer to make sure we identify all the key stakeholders from the business point of view too. It's very important to have the right buy-in from the beginning on the project. Engaging the right team members with the business is critical for the success of the project in long term. When it comes to the delivery methodology, MST has been very flexible to align with the state or our client's needs. And if they have an internal, their own delivery methodology, we are open to align to those methodology. However, we also bring in one of the best way of delivering project for state agencies in our experience, which is a little bit of a mix of predictable, what we call traditionally a waterfall methodology, and the agile delivery world. We at MST, we call it a 3D approach, which is discover, design, and then deliver. What that means is we spend the right amount of time in early discovery and design before we jump on the implementation cycle for the project. This gives us a visibility into what's beyond and make sure we start on the right foot on the implementation. Same was the case with ASLD. This was a brand new implementation with multiple integrations and migration of legacy application. It made all the sense to follow the 3D approach. We spent 2 to 3 months, 2 months, I would say, early in discovery and a detailed level of design. And once we had that enough design available for the team, we were able to kick off the implementation in a more Scrum-based methodology, where we get frequent feedback from the stakeholders to course correct along the way. And that initial discovery and design also provided us an opportunity to look at our phased approach, which we are going to talk about in a few minutes from now with Jennifer. But it really allowed us to align that long-term roadmap and what makes sense to attack first, get the critical wins like reducing the paper dependency, and then later we start integrating the legacy technologies like the document management solution. Maybe now, Jennifer, would you like to talk about how you led the early planning in the ASLD team and you got the team excited about the new project?
Sure. Thank you, Raul. So yeah, at the land department, kind of as Ryan said, the commissioner, at an all hands meeting told us that she wanted to find the application status at 3 a.m. And as a result, she was, initiating this massive project to change it. So as I got brought on as a SME, we would, meet with MST where we would have the discovery sessions where we were able to, really dive deep into the process. And as part of a exciting buy-in, the department held a competition to give this whole project a name. Out of all the submissions, the name LEAP was selected, and it stands for Land Electronic Application Process. But it was just great because it really brought a lot of awareness and created a lot of buzz throughout the department about this legendary project that we were initiating. Back to you, JC.
Thank you very much, Jen and Rahul, taking us through all of that one. I think now is a good time to transition into project execution and the custom solution that ASLD and MST developed and put into place. If I can hand the torch back to Ryan Smith, maybe you can start us off by just taking us through strategy and roadmap.
I'd love to. Thank you. And I think, our colleagues here have really highlighted quite a bit of this. So, this was really about us slowing down to plan well and speed up. We knew that the customer was really the endpoint that we were serving initially. We also knew that our staff at the State Land Department was going to be doing their work in different ways. But still, this was very much a customer-focused part of the roadmap. If you look across the future phases that our colleagues will speak to, you'll see that that goes more back office at a certain point. But, as Rahul mentioned, we took that hybrid SDLC approach, really needed to start with understanding the current state. As Jen had mentioned, we spent a couple of months, or maybe that was Rahul, but a couple of months in the basement, looking to ensure that we understood what these forms were and how people did their work. And so through our, MST's, what we call MST way or 3D approach, we also want to institute these industry best practices, whether it's business analysis or Scrum or waterfall project management methodologies. But again, this was really with an added underscore on people and process. While we're aligning to what the Salesforce platform can do, we know that it can really guide to new ways of doing work and creating efficiencies, both in operating and transforming the way you operate. But we really focused on people and process in those initial phases. So, as Ryan and Jennifer mentioned, 100-year-old paper-driven process. Now was the time to kind of take that leap. It was very much tongue-in-cheek, but very much accurate that, turning your electronic applications into a modern tech platform was quite a leap going from paper. So we took that time to understand the complexity of the application process. Remember 95 steps that Ryan mentioned earlier. We knew it was extremely important for us to be really prudent in understanding what people's current roles are, what their jobs were to be done. And once we understood that, we took a much deeper dive to collect those business requirements. And folks like Jen and a few other subject matter expert stakeholders were really the first lever of the strategy in making sure that this was not only a successful project or phase of the project, but they'd have an opportunity to really understand what to do next after earning that initial value. So again, we spent 2 months concentrated in the basement with SMEs, agency leadership. We had change management professionals. We had our engineers, business analysts. They were all focused on what's happening today. We weren't even trying to think about what the solution could look like. Of course, we were itching to do that, but we really stayed disciplined to think about what is the current state and really discussing the business requirements among that group. Sometimes we'd break out and we'd have different sessions because we'd need to deep dive that was a little less relevant to others. But in the end, we'd bring our information back and we'd share it with the group because another, subject matter expert or SME could find, maybe a hole that we weren't thinking of. So it's really a collaborative approach. And we also took in, I think Ryan mentioned the Arizona management system. This was an ongoing initiative across the entire state. And we all know, let's figure out process change before we throw technology at that. So we really heeded what was coming out of the AMS initiatives and really wanted to consider just to make sure that, we weren't remiss on process change could effectively transform the agency as well. So, focusing on customer experience first, and then seeing the time it took to intake and process applications, it had a negative impact on revenue streams, and it became increasingly, cumbersome for staff. So finally, through all of that, we were able to figure out, what the current state was, what the voice of the customer was, and really build a thoughtful solution around those needs. So after all of that thorough planning, we pivoted to, as Rahul had said, our MST way or 3D methodology. And that was really our agile Scrum approach. So we pivoted to iterating on different sprints with a focus on really how the people and the SMEs that we were using, how much time we were using of theirs, and how we would engage with them. It was a brand new methodology for the department. And so, we wanted to take the time to explain it. And even when we explained all of the sprint ceremonies and what their role was within each ceremony, whether they were just informed or they were responsible for making a decision, or even showing them through demos what the new system was looking like as we built it over time. So, once we had that solid, understanding of what the execution would look like, we were able to develop the solution, over a period of time, demonstrate the functionality, and really in bite-sized chunks. There was a lot to drink from the fire hose throughout the project, and we wanted to make sure that we were, persistent in change, but not overdoing it as well. So we had ways to measure that and really figure out, how these SMEs and really the organization was changing over time, which ultimately really led us to success when it was time to accept the solution and really go live. So, we kept there were a lot of subject matter experts. I mean, we had representation from every department that the process touched. But once we got through that initial cycle of requirements gathering, we really then in the notion of best use of people's time, we reduced that team to the core subject matter experts who then became champions over the time. And they would be instrumental, I think, from there and until this day in helping ensure adoption. So maybe we can hand it back over to Jennifer and Rahul to take us into the trenches from the different phases that we went through.
Thank you, Ryan. Perfect. So let's talk about how we started the multi-phased, multi-project approach, right? We talked about the early planning. We definitely started with a little bit of predictability into the project combined with the agility in the delivery model. We created a detailed work breakdown structure and project plan, which incorporated all the software development and quality cycles, the change management approaches and plannings. More importantly, we also had different lanes carved out for just-in-time proof of concepts as we were evolving new and newer technologies to help land team with all their business goals. But we also focused on key areas to make sure we don't deviate too much from that, right? Which were the main business goals of digitizing all the applications with efficient workflow processing, focusing on document management and document generation, integrations with other tools and technologies like online fee payment system to pull in the efficiency on the payments. And Ryan Smith talked about how important org change management was in the initial phases of the project. It's a big modernization process that we have been kicking with the ASLD team. So organization change management was the key to our planning. It included planning around key stakeholders, managing internal and external stakeholders, training and documentation, with keeping both personas in mind, and frequent communication to keep everybody on the same page on the status of the project. It was also important for us to provide ASLD all the benefits that comes with the Salesforce's continuous innovation. While we had initially delivered all the critical features on the community portal around 2017, where we were still a little bit on the classic, little bit moving into the Lightning version, we were upgrading these experiences as Salesforce was releasing new features like Lightning Web Components for improved user experience. And we started that activity somewhere around 2019. When we talk about the user experience, throughout the project, we were definitely focused on delivering the business values through automations, community portal, flows in the community portal, but we followed the design thinking approach all along. MST has a dedicated team to focus on design thinking approach and how that can help on major digital transformations for our agencies. Design thinking is an iterative process in which you seek to understand our users, we challenge our assumptions, we define problems, and through this, we create solutions which we are able to prototype on, test on, and then deliver. Our new community portal is now a living example of how the design thinking approach has helped citizens who are being served by the ASLD team. Jennifer, do you want to highlight how this went and maybe walk us through some of the outcomes?
Sure. Thank you, Rahul. So at the end of our first project, our primary goal was to implement a community portal where external customers could submit an electronic application and track the status of that application, right? Because as we stated before, you'd have to come in with a paper application and try and call someone to get a status of the application. But as you can see here on the screen, right, we initially launched our initial community in 2017. And it was really well received by our customers because they could now submit an application online. But shortly after the rollout of our community portal, the department and MST implemented an online payment system for our applicants to submit an application fee. Once this was deployed, our entire application process was now digital. So as the department grew comfortable with working in a digital environment and listening to our external customer base, we realized that our community portal needed an upgrade. So in 2019, as you'll see, the community portal got an upgrade, and now it provides a better customer experience as all their information is represented in a visual format rather than a text format. This response to our new community portal has been tremendous. Everyone is extremely positive about it, but it's led to a lot of success both internally and externally in getting more buy-in from our customers. Raul, would you like to discuss the application project?
Thank you, Jennifer. So now was the time for us to keep building on our success of the initial project. Once it was successfully launched, we ensured all the internal and external users were trained and they were feeling comfortable with the new application, not even feeling comfortable, but they were enjoying the application. Then we started working with the ASLD team on the next priority features. The initial success gave us enough confidence to increase automation in the Salesforce application, because whenever we start on these big modernization projects, the biggest fear is the change management aspect with the employees who have been working on a certain process for years in their career, and suddenly a change comes in, right? But the initial success gave us that confidence that yes, the users are embracing the automation in Salesforce. How can we move forward from there on? So we started to accelerate this process. We added more automation and integration. For example, we worked on the payment integration. We moved some of the legacy application integrations into the batches in Salesforce. And in some instances, we also had the opportunity to define applications and automations we had originally built. One of the examples was implementing paths for statuses on application object for improved experiences. So this is what we have already built, but taking it to another level for the user experience. Jennifer, do you want to provide some background on how we achieve these goals for the business team?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Raul. So as you kind of just mentioned, as we initially launched our application, we when we were doing those discovery phases, we sat with MST and we kind of took our paper process and turned it into a digital process. And as you can see here on the screen, right, we have an application that's present, and you're able to see all the applicable statuses that is applicable for this application type, which was great. It was really moving us into the digital space to allow us to process applications digitally. But as we became more comfortable with the software, we realized we could improve the application process, as Raul just kind of mentioned. So in 2018, we launched a fully customizable application status bar across, and you can see this across the top of the screen. Now this shows at a very easy, visual level what the status of the application is and what the status of those statuses are. The department can't get enough of the status bar. They absolutely love it, rave about it all the time, want it on everything. So this has been so great and really instrumental in getting adoption, and having people use the application process more. Raul, would you like to discuss our next project where we also improved our document migration?
Thank you, Jennifer. So like Jennifer mentioned, now we are certainly at a point where, we had accomplished all the critical goals. And in the next project phase, we improved upon those project goals that were initially accomplished. Now we are at a point where we want to bring in few more major applications integrations into Salesforce and make Salesforce be the core application for most of the processing in ASLD department. Therefore, for this upcoming project phase, document management integration was the key goal for the team. We were able to bring in our experience in integrating different types of document management solutions, cloud-based, custom solutions, and more. But in this case, we were tasked to identify what can be the right level of integration with their existing custom document management solution so that org change management activities can be contained. We still use the existing custom application, but how can we bring that into Salesforce for a bit better user experience? I talked about a little bit on the design thinking approach. We again doubled down on that approach. We ran some proof of concepts, wireframes, and then eventually we came out of those sessions agreeing on the type of integration that we can achieve with some APIs and the Lightning Web components. As a result of that, now the users can see all the record details in Salesforce along with the associated documentation in the Salesforce itself. Jennifer, do you want to take us through how that user experience is about and maybe how we were able to expand that not only for the internal users, but also the community portal users?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Earl. So as you'll see again here on my screen, this is how, we, at the department, we have that paper process and we turned it into a, kind of a digital process. And so when we launched Salesforce, this was our way of linking up this document integration, right? So you could click on a link, you could see all the documents that were assigned to that application release. And then in 2018, we allowed the applicants, our internal customers to upload files, and that would directly relate back to our document management system, right? But this integration wasn't kind of native. It needed some improvement. So just last year, we now have a fully integrated connection between our document system and Salesforce. So not only does that allow our internal customers to upload and view everything right in Salesforce, that actually now provided our external customers the ability to view any of their documentation that they had uploaded or that we had uploaded, and they could upload their additional stuff as well. Again, a lot of people really enjoy this because it doesn't, necessitate them to give us a call to find these documents. They're able to self-service themselves. So it's great. Raul, would you like to discuss additional opportunity areas that we enhanced?
Perfect. As Jennifer mentioned, right, we have now at this point completed all the major goals that we wanted to achieve with the Salesforce implementation. And we are now what you can call adding more bells and whistles in the application, right? One day, me and Ryan Johnson were talking about, and he talked about an incident where now the different users from the different departments within ASLD are walking up to Jennifer or Ryan Johnson that, hey, how about we bring in this process to the Salesforce application, right? Because they can see it in working really well, and now they are easily able to compare how it is for them without Salesforce, right? And this is where Salesforce as a platform really shines. Like Legos, we are now adding new blocks onto the application without impacting the existing processes. And we are able to do that as we want to prioritize these new features. Most of the time, we are able to leverage out-of-the-box Salesforce capabilities like case management, account contact management, activity management, and event management. Once in a while, we do go down the path of customization, but it's always out-of-the-box discussion first before we ever talk about customization. That helps keeping the long-term cost for maintenance and operations as low as possible. And provides Jennifer and team opportunity to keep it in-house, right? That's ideal where we as vendors want to be. We want to hand over the application to the internal IT team and move on to the bigger things. But like we talked about, right? Today we are delivering value as fast as business needs it for the ASLD team. Over to you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Earl. So yeah, as Earl mentioned, it's a great kind of problem to have. I'm not sure Ryan or I could identify where that process changed, but we are inundated with requests. Everyone really sees the benefit of Salesforce, how it could improve their processes, right? Or just allow them better checking. So some of the examples of things that we've now migrated into Salesforce, we have a purchase order here on the screen, right? We've also done some help desk tickets. We've also migrated billing questionnaires, and as Raul kind of just mentioned, the list keeps growing. It's a nice problem to have. So JC, would you like to, back to you, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was a huge lift on yours and Raul's part to take us through all of that detailed breakdown, and not only the initial project execution, but how you were then unafraid to acknowledge where something you had done could be improved upon. but then also spotting areas for improvement, and how after the initial launch, you started to get kind of a snowball effect in a good way, where other departments cross-functionally are noticing, man, this is great. We can improve even more. Now we want to be in on it. And that's pretty amazing. And in fact, that's actually a good point to transition into benefits and ROI. And I'm thinking that we'll let Jen and Rahul take a short breather after all of sharing all of that. And I'm going to hand the relay back to Ryan Johnson to get us started on that, please.
Casey. So one of our main goals as we set out in the beginning of this was, can I see the status of that application in the middle of the night? That's what the commissioner wanted. Definitely, we accomplished that. You could see that from the screenshots there. The customers can see it. The internal staff can see it, what's going on with any of these applications in the middle of this. But we also had some statewide metrics that we were kind of tracking as we went along. One of the governor's initiative obviously was those, processes that were online now for the customer. So that's been one of our key metrics. When we started this whole process, we were not necessarily zero, but we were near 0% as far as the amount of interactions that were happening online. We were also tracking, how many of our applications that were paper-based previously are coming in now in a digital format, and we're actually in like the 90% range. Because customers, maybe they're in rural parts of the state, they can still submit their applications paper. There's no problem with that. But I think at this point where we've taken the community portal to this new place, what they can do all these interactions online, and most of our customers have chosen to take advantage of that. I think one of the other big things that we've done is we started this with essentially like 58 separate application processes. Because you can imagine it's over 100 years. If I wanted to, have a new process, I just take that check sheet and I just change it for whatever I want. It's single threaded. Who cares? Nobody's really looking at it. But when we go through the, the Arizona management system, we're looking at those lean processes, and we want to take this to a new level to the digital space. That was what, Ryan Smith was talking about. We had all these sessions in the basement. We map out the processes. We actually change them. I don't know what the exact number is. I'm sure Jennifer would know, but we've unified those down to a much smaller number of processes that are actually digital in the system. And they're now, as they were saying, multi-threaded. So that's very important as well. And they already also touched on the number of features. We're just absolutely inundated for requests for new things that people want in the system. So that's been a kind of an internal thing, knowing that, I think it's been a huge success for us.
Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to Ryan Smith to just continue that discussion on what are the benefits of all of this work and the takeaways.
Yeah, thanks, JC, and thanks, Ryan. When I think about benefits, I think about what was really critical for us to be focused on to then bring those benefits. And I'll go back to kind of what we started with. It's really around planning thoroughly, being inclusive, clearly understanding your current state, and spending plenty of time to get to know your stakeholders, develop trust, develop the customer personas, and really tune in on what that voice of the customer is, what those needs are, and test your solution as you get further into your project. Are we still meeting those, those needs and those desires and those new ways to engage with the agency? The other really critical success factor, there's a lot of places to start a technology project. There may not be a given right way that's consistent to every agency, but it's really important to figure out what that is for the agency and really identify the correct scope to start with. Design a roadmap that depicts the important dependencies, whether those are people or process or even a technology dependency. Maybe you've got a system that is just going to be difficult to get through the data on. We'll get together and figure out, well, how do we attack that, and where does it make sense to put that into the plan, and again, how do we go about doing that? So it really just leads for a smarter and more risk-reduced execution plan. This is always going to be a thoughtful and a way to enable further adoption and just help you mitigate, new gaps or confusing processes that may come unintended out of such an effort. So, as you can see, as of now, the journey with Land has been heavily focused on serving the customer better, designed to provide them more services, more online services, new ways to interact with the agency. I'd say from here forward, there's still more to come on that end, but other things that'll be taking place are back office processes, working with that ERP and everything from land parceling to the royalty management processes. So more to come with the State Land Department. And those are the critical success factors that people should really be thinking about as you dive into a project like this.
Thank you, Ryan. I know we had some kind of funny and personal growth stories coming out of this multiple year project. Do we have anyone here who wants to share what some of those stories were like around personal growth? Jen, I know you've got one. Will you share?
Yeah. So as we were kind of talking about earlier, right, I was initially brought on this team as a SME member. To help kind of identify, I was working at the mineral section at the time, to identify, the mineral section processes as we were transitioning. But now I play a much different role in our agency. I'm now the IT project manager, and I really do, I enjoy it, but I get to help people in our building identify their processes, right? And how can we transition this into a Salesforce environment? And it's really, it's great. It's been lovely. Thanks, JC.
Pretty awesome. And what about on the MST side, Rahul?
Thanks, JC. From MST's perspective, it has been an amazingly rewarding experience for all of us. In a sense, this project has served us as a template on how to go about large modernization projects in a multi-phased approach, if possible. Right? Phased approach really helps in containing all change management activities while the agency users can still focus on delivering on their primary mission of serving the constituents of the state, right? The citizens of the state. We acknowledge that it is not possible on all modernization projects to have a multi-phased approach. Sometimes in what we can call, it requires a one-time big bang migration. But this project has given us enough lessons that we can take to our other clients and propose how a multi-phased approach can be successful. Some of the learnings are always around technology. In this case, we integrated some custom document management solution that we talked about, other tools and applications like SREAD, GIS, and others. However, most importantly, we also focus on learning the business behind it. We come out of this project knowing how to use the Salesforce ecosystem to support natural resources management for the state agencies. Whether it is about auction or purchases, leases or permits, we have solved it. We are now doing similar projects for other agencies like water resource management, fire management, forestry and fire, and so on. So that's been our biggest takeaway and learnings from this project, and in your words, growth for us, JC.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's been an amazing journey to hear about, not only to build this game-changing platform that eliminated manual processes, created a significantly better experience on both sides of the counter, both on the customer experience side and for the workers who were apparently running up and down steps a lot, getting all of this stuff done. I don't know how y'all keep in shape now. But it's pretty amazing to see that growth. And I know that some people have some questions and we don't have a lot of time. So we maybe can squeeze one question in and we'll have to give them the Cliff Notes answer. version of an answer. And it's sprinkled throughout the webinar, but maybe we can shine a spotlight on this one. What kind of advice would you give to a fellow department who is looking to go through a similar journey in a similar situation? What would you suggest they do to start or keep in their minds as they go through that process? Who wants that?
I can field this one with a quick answer, hopefully. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces, a lot of factors, a lot of different things that go into making a project success, and we talked about a lot of them. But I think the most important thing that was for the land department was finding the right people to bring into the project. And for us, that was the subject matter experts that we selected. These people have a day job, but we found the right people, and they just put in so many hours in ensuring that this was a success, because they could really see what we were trying to accomplish, along with knowing their business processes really well. So I think if you can identify those right people and do what you need to do to bring them into your process, that will get you the most farthest down the road there, for sure.
Yeah, that seems like a really good place to start and to keep in your mind as you're going through. What we'll do, because we're so short on time, anyone who signed up, you're going to get a link via email with the on-demand version of this webinar. That'll give you an opportunity to shoot over to us any questions that you have, and we will do our best to answer. So please feel free to reach out to us through there with anything that you would like answered that you didn't have time to put in, and we'll do our best. I want to thank the panelists for coming on here. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking time out of your schedules to come and share this story, and for the attendees who came to hear it. Look out for that on-demand recording, and thank you so very, very much.